I did a video like this for Cedar Fair, and now it's time for Six Flags. If you haven't seen the Cedar Fair 2022 coaster prediction video, go check that out in the link in the card above. No long intro needed here, let's get to the video. The ideal small park lineup should have a standout coaster, an airtime focus ride, wooden coaster, looper, family coaster, launch coaster, and a coaster with unique seating, and multiple coasters can check the same box, and a single coaster can check more than one box. Let's get started. Like the Cedar Fair video, let's start from the bottom up. Frontier City features a lineup with an Arrow shuttle loop, which really doesn't check any boxes because it doesn't have too much airtime. The launch isn't really a launch, also partially check the standout coaster box for this one too. Frankie's Mine Train and Steel Lasso both give them a family coaster, Steel Lasso also with unique seating. Silver Bullet only has one inversion, so it partially checks the looper box as well as the standout box, and then Wildcat fills the wooden coaster gap. So the only gaps that are actually filled are the family coaster and wooden coaster, leaving standout, looper, launch, and airtime partially filled. The best way to fill these gaps would be a modern VEKOMA launch coaster, but Six Flags hasn't worked with VEKOMA just yet, so I wouldn't bet on Frontier City getting this. A much more likely option would be an RMC Raptor. Capacity would not be an issue, so they could go with an 8-car model. Great Escape is the second from the bottom in the Six Flags chain, this park featuring a good wooden coaster and Comet, which also fills the airtime gap. The park has a couple of loopers with Steamin' Demon, an Arrow 3 inversion corkscrew coaster, and Flashback, a VEKOMA boomerang. Canyon Blaster, Alpine Bobsled, and Frankie's Mine Train give them a family coaster, Alpine Bobsled also bringing unique seating. They have every gap filled except for a good standout coaster and a launch. Comet partially gives them a standout, but they could do better. A modern VEKOMA launch coaster would work very well, but as I said for the previous park, Six Flags has not worked with them yet. A relocation of something from another park would work very well, maybe Vertical Velocity at Six Flags Great America, but a much better option would be to just give this park an RMC Raptor. La Ronde is the first park that really fills the standout gap with a mini B&M Hyper and Goliath, which also gives them airtime, and a Batman the Ride clone, which also gives them a looper and a coaster with unique seating. Sure, they aren't the best standout coasters, but for a park of this size, they are more than sufficient. Their VEKOMA SLC gives them another looper with unique seating, and Monster fills their wooden coaster gap. The park also has a boomerang as well as a few family coasters. By far their biggest gap is a launch coaster. A Skyrocket 2 would work very well, as would a relocation of Vertical Velocity from Great America. I think that the best option would be an SNS launch coaster like Max Force, but something from Premier Rides similar to Icebreaker would be a cheaper option for the park. Six Flags America leads us into the medium-sized Six Flags parks. A medium-sized park should have at least 2 standout coasters, at least 1 airtime focus coaster and wooden coaster, 2 loopers and family coasters, and then 1 launch coaster and a coaster with unique seating. Six Flags America features a good standout coaster in Superman Ride of Steel. Accompanying it is Joker's Jinx, a Premier Rides launch coaster, Batwing, a VEKOMA Flying Dutchman, giving them a looper with unique seating, as well as Firebird and Mind Eraser. Ragin' Cajun gives them a spinning coaster, Great Chase gives them a family coaster, and then the pair of Roar and Wild One fill the wooden coaster gap. Another family coaster and another standout are the gaps in the lineup, and while another family coaster would be a good option, the obvious choice for this park is to give Roar the RMC treatment. This layout would be less inversion focused, like the conversion of its sister coaster at Discovery Kingdom. It would focus on airtime and unique elements because there are so many other inversion focused coasters in the park, and Superman delivers a very different style of airtime with much more standard elements. Six Flags St. Louis is home to a solid collection of wooden coasters in a lineup where many different coasters could be considered the best, but none of them are that strong of a standout coaster, so I'll leave that partially checked. The Boss, American Thunder, and Screamin' Eagle are all wooden coasters, and a couple of them give some airtime, but it could be better. The park has a boomerang and a Batman clone for loopers, and the park has a spinning coaster in Pandemonium and a family coaster with River King Mine Train. Mr. Freeze looks like a decent standout, but more of a complimentary standout that would go alongside an even better standout coaster. That better standout coaster could be an RMC conversion of the Boss. This park is missing an ejector airtime focus coaster, and this could be the perfect fit. They're getting the Flat Ride in 2022, so I don't think that any new coaster would be arriving alongside that. Six Flags Darien Lake has the solid standout in Ride of Steel, which also gives them some airtime, a wooden coaster with Predator, and a few looping coasters and family coasters. They don't have a second standout coaster, and they don't have an extreme launch coaster. An RMC conversion of Predator would be a great second standout, but I think that the park could use an intense launch coaster like Max Force, or a launch coaster with a longer layout like something from VEKOMA. But I think that a Max Force clone would be the best option, and I could see that coming in 2023 or 2024. Six Flags Discovery Kingdom is headlined by Joker, the RMC Hybrid, and Medusa, a B&M Floorless, the latter of which being a bit of a weaker standout. The park features a few looping coasters with unique seating, launch coasters, and family coasters, but they're missing a wooden coaster. A GCI RMCI would work well, but Six Flags doesn't install wooden coasters anymore. An RMC Raptor would be a great replacement for Harley Quinn once they get rid of that, but Great America's Railblazer is pretty close by. The best and most realistic standout coaster option would be a VEKOMA Bermuda BLITZ, which delivers lots of airtime and inversions, but they could modify the layout so that it features less than 2 inversions because the park already has a ton of inversion-focused rides. They are scheduled to open Sidewinder Safari as Zamperla's Spinning Wild Mouse, so I'll go with that for 2022. Six Flags Mexico features an amazing coaster duo with Medusa and Superman, and not really much else. There are a couple of loopers with a boomerang and an SLC, and a few family coasters. The biggest gaps are a wooden coaster and a launch coaster. Knowing Six Flags, they wouldn't want to deal with maintaining another wooden coaster, so let's just cut that possibility out. A launch coaster would be very good for this park. A Max Force light coaster would work very well, but I'm more looking towards a layout-based launch coaster like an Intamin Blitz or a VEKOMA launch coaster. While an Intamin Blitz would be amazing, I don't see Six Flags working with them anytime soon, so let's look at the possible VEKOMA launch coaster layouts. The park already has 2 great airtime-focused coasters, so a more inversion-focused coaster would be great because all of the park's other inversion-based coasters are not exactly too good. Abyssus at Energylandia has the Super Shockwave or Shockwave Plus layout, but how about the one going to Dragon Valley Theme Park in China? This layout is similar to the second half of Abyssus and features 5 inversions. Unfortunately, I don't see Six Flags adding such a large addition to one of their more medium-sized parks, especially right after a pandemic. Moving on to larger parks, they should also have a spinning coaster or a 4D coaster, and just more of every other category. Six Flags New England is another park that features a great coaster duo, also an RMC and a Superman-themed coaster, being Wicked Cyclone and Superman the Ride, which both check the standout box and the airtime. Wicked Cyclone also has inversions, and is helped by Riddler's Revenge, Flashback, and Batman in that category as well. The park has a wooden coaster in Thunderbolt and a few family coasters. Pretty much everything is checked except for a launch coaster. I think that the best option for this park is an S&S launch coaster like Max Force. I do kinda wish that we could get one of those air launch coasters that S&S makes in China with the super steep drop and the weird elements, but that's just a wish. Though I don't see one coming in 2022, it could be a possibility. For Six Flags Over Texas, New Texas Giant checks the standout box as well as airtime. They have a few intense inverting coasters with Shockwave, Batman, and Mr. Freeze, and then Titan also brings the intensity with more height and speed. The park has quite a few family coasters, including a couple of Aero mine trains and a spinning coaster with a Pandemonium clone. What would work here would be a launch coaster with a focus on the layout, which would be an experience that would differ from Mr. Freeze. They are scheduled to open AQUAMAN Powerwave in 2022. A Premier or VEKOMA launch coaster would be a good coaster to follow up AQUAMAN, with a launch coaster experience that is very different from Mr. Freeze and AQUAMAN. Six Flags Over Georgia has the prolific coaster duo of Goliath and Twisted Cyclone, both of which check the airtime box, backed up by a few unique looping coasters in Mindbender, Daredevil Dive, and Blue Hawk, as well as some B&M loopers in Superman, Batman, and Georgia Scorcher. The park has a wooden coaster in Great American Scream Machine, as well as a couple of family coasters with Joker Funhouse Coaster and the Mine Train. Like New England, their biggest gap is a launch coaster. For this park, a launch coaster with a shorter layout would work well. The layout would not need to be as short as Max Force, but it could be around the length and duration of one of the S&S air launch coasters in China, something like OCT Thrust. Fiesta Texas is headlined by a coaster duo, the only one where both spots are filled by RMCs, and both of which check the airtime box. Behind those are a couple of loopers and a boomerang, Superman, Batman, and Poltergeist, which also gives them a launch coaster. They also have a free spin, a Pandemonium clone, and a couple of family coasters with Roadrunner Express and Streamliner coaster. This park is already teasing a new 2022 attraction, and I think that this will be the first S&S Axis coaster. Six Flags has put many prototypes and early versions of models into this park, so why not continue that with the Axis? I'm hoping that this layout has a launch that is powerful even if it's not too fast, followed by a layout filled with inversions, disorienting elements, and maybe even a couple of airtime moments snuck in there. Six Flags Great Adventure features yet another Intamin RMC duo with El Toro and Jersey Devil, both of which check the airtime box, and El Toro being the wooden coaster. Jersey Devil also brings some inversions, as well as Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, and Bizarro. Nitro accompanies El Toro and Jersey Devil in the airtime category, bringing floater instead of ejector. The lineup is rounded out with King Ka bringing the launch, Joker with the free spinning, and they have a few family coasters. The biggest thing that Great Adventure is missing is a launch coaster with a focus on the layout. They have King Ka, but that is a short ride, and the main focus of the ride is the extreme speed at which the launch propels the train. Something like West Coast Racers would work very well here. I know that the park doesn't exactly have the best history with dueling Premier Rides launch coasters, but West Coast Racers Racers has been a success for Magic Mountain, so I think that Six Flags will look into adding one of these for Great Adventure. They just added the RMC Raptor Jersey Devil, so I don't think that this would be a forceful or intense experience like something from VEKOMA or Intamin. Also, because of Jersey Devil opening in 2021, they won't get any new coasters for 2022. Six Flags Great America has a solid top 3 with Raging Bull bringing airtime, Goliath bringing airtime and inversions, and checking the wooden coaster category, and Max Force rounds out the top 3 with inversions in addition to its launch. The lineup has quite a few more inverting coasters with Batman, Superman, X-Flight, and Demon, and a few more wooden coasters with American Eagle, Viper, and Little Dipper. Vertical Velocity adds on another launch, and Joker is the free spin. While Great America has Max Force, they are missing a longer launch coaster. Similar to Great Adventure, I could see them adding a Premier Rides launch coaster, but I think that a VEKOMA launch coaster like a Shockwave would be a much better fit at this park. This park needs a solid standout, and while the big 3 of Goliath, Raging Bull, and Max Force are solid, this park needs something that could be the definite standout of the park. Kinda like Cedar Point before Steel Vengeance. Sure, they had tons and tons of amazing rides, but they needed something that would be the park's elite standout attraction, and they got it with Steel Vengeance. I think that a VEKOMA Shockwave Plus layout like Abyssus would be amazing for this park, but I don't think that it will come in 2022. Magic Mountain has Twisted Colossus and X2 on top. Twisted Colossus bring the airtime, and X2 checks the 4D/spinning coaster box. Tatsu, Batman Scream, Riddler, Viper, West Coast Racers, and Full Throttle all bring the inversions. Full Throttle, West Coast Racers, and Superman all bring the launch, and the park also has a few family coasters to round out the lineup. Six Flags Magic Mountain has so many coasters, but they don't have anything that focuses on floater airtime. You have your ejector airtime with Twisted Colossus, but the park lacks something with floater airtime. A B&M Hyper would be great, but Six Flags has not worked with B&M in forever. In 2022, I think that they will open a large-scale Raptor similar to Jersey Devil. While I think a B&M Hyper would be a better fit in the lineup, they only have one coaster with airtime in the lineup, so I think that an RMC Raptor can add to that. So to recap, my predictions for the 2022 editions are that Magic Mountain will receive an upscale RMC Raptor with a layout similar if not identical to Jersey Devil, just modified to fit into a specific space. Fiesta Texas will get the first ever S&S Axis coaster with a layout featuring a powerful launch and a pretty short layout that packs a punch. Over Texas will open AQUAMAN Powerwave, the Mach Rides Power Splash that was originally supposed to open in 2020, and Discovery Kingdom will open Sidewinder Safari, the spinning Wild Mouse coaster. I think that these 4 are very likely to happen, but there might be one addition that could sneak up on us. I think that if any other park could possibly get something in 2022, it would be Six Flags New England with the S&S launch coaster, but I still think that that's pretty unlikely. That will wrap it up for this one. Make sure to like the video and stay tuned for future coaster content. See ya.